of this session becomes interesting because we would be discussing about women health. Yes, if you are men, you would be understanding the woman who gives you food, who makes up your house, who does everything for you, and how you can take care of her. And if you are women, it is important to discuss about us. It is important to celebrate us, and it is important to look after us. Now, I welcome my co-host Swastika to take over from me. Thank you, Swastika.
Thank you so much, ma'am. आप सभी का आज के एफडीपी के तृतीय दिवस के प्रथम सत्र में स्वागत है और मैं डॉक्टर रेणु मिश्रा का यहाँ पर स्वागत करती हूँ और आप सभी के लिए और हम सभी के लिए ये सौभाग्य का विषय है कि आज हमें ऐसी बड़ी महान हस्ती से रूबरू होने का अवसर मिला है। तो आज हम आपको मिलवाने जा रहे हैं डॉक्टर रेणु मिश्रा से, जो कि मशहूर गाइनोकोलॉजिस्ट हैं, MBBS MS हैं और इस वक्त मिरेकल्स फर्टिलिटी एंड IVF क्लिनिक गुड़गांव में सीनियर कंसल्टेंट हैं। मैम ने MBBS और MS MLB मेडिकल कॉलेज झांसी से किया है और Dr. Renu Mishra has since served as a specialist for the last 31 years in various hospitals in India and abroad. Dr. Mishra has a large experience in treatment of infertility, which includes medical treatment, endoscopies, and open surgery if required, and IVF too. Mishra obtained training IVF in various centers in UK, Ireland, and USA. डॉक्टर मिश्रा को बहुत सारे अवार्ड्स और ऑनर्स मिले हैं। इन्हें कॉमनवेल्थ स्कॉलरशिप मिली है यूनाइटेड किंगडम में 1993-94 में और इन्हें आयरलैंड में भी ट्रेनिंग के लिए स्कॉलरशिप मिली है। और जैसा कि आप देख सकते हैं पीपीटी में, मैम पास्ट एडिटर रही है इंडियन जर्नल ऑफ गायनोलॉजिकल इंडोस्कोपी, जिसमें इन्होंने 350 प्लस गेस्ट लेक्चर्स दिए हैं। And now we are going to talk about her achievements. So she was among us the first Indian gynecologist to receive formal training in laparoscopic and hysteroscopic surgery abroad for 1 year. After her training in UK, she returned to India and joined All India Institute of Medical Science. This is AIIMS. And Dr. Mishra organized the first live surgery workshop at AIIMS in 1995 for the exposure and training of gynecologists in India. और तभी से मैम रेगुलरली वर्कशॉप्स वगैरह कर रहे हैं और अपनी सेवा से और अपार अनुभव से जन सेवा कर रहे हैं। नाउ वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट हर एकेडमिक कंट्रीब्यूशन. So she taught undergraduate and postgraduate students in India and abroad. Even Dr. Mishra has written textbooks in obstetrics and gynecology for students and practicing gynecologists. और डॉक्टर मिश्रा ने 2000 से ज़्यादा लेक्चर्स प्रोफेशनल मीटिंग्स में डिलीवर किए हैं और दूरदर्शन पे भी इनकी रेगुलर हेल्थ से रिलेटेड टॉक्स वगैरह होती रहती हैं। और now we are going to talk about doctor's publications. So she have written many books. Some of them are here, like recent development in gynecologic and interventional laparoscopy, Ian Donald's practical obstetric problems etc. मैम ने बहुत सारे चैप्टर्स लिखे हैं जो उनके फर्स्ट ऑथर के रूप में पब्लिश हुए हैं, जैसे मैनेजमेंट ऑफ गायनोकोलॉजिकल इमरजेंसीज और बहुत सारे। और more than 55 plus articles are published in international and national journals. Now the most important thing, we are going to talk about her abroad experience. So she was clinical fellow in Hope Hospital, University of Manchester, UK. She was Commonwealth fellow in Leeds General Infirmary, Leeds University in UK. She was registrar in London, Middlesex Hospital. और अब हम बात करते हैं इनके प्रोफेशनल एक्सपीरियंस की। तो मैम सफदरजंग हॉस्पिटल में सीनियर रेजिडेंट रही हैं, और यूनिवर्सिटी कॉलेज ऑफ मेडिकल साइंस में लेक्चरर, और एम्स में इन्होंने असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर के रूप में स्टार्ट किया, देन एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर, देन एडिशनल प्रोफेसर। तो 2006 तक मैम ने एम्स में अपनी सेवाएं दी हैं। नाउ I am not going to take so much time. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am, and thank you for taking the time out from your busy schedule and giving us our valuable time. Now, I'm just giving you the platform right now, and thank you so much, ma'am. Please encourage us with your very warm, encouraging lecture. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Swasti. Okay, first of all, am I the host or co-host now?
Yes, ma'am, you are co-host.
Okay, I wanted to just change my name because, I use this Indian Fertility Society platform a lot, and that is showing the IFS secretary's name. So first of all, let me...
Pramod, are you here?
It's okay, I have done that. I have done that. Okay. So a very good afternoon to all of you, all those who have logged in for today's FTP program. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. Smriti Singh and her team for this wonderful initiative, and also to thank her for having me here for this program today. I'm glad, Dr. Smriti, that you have thought of women's health, because although we are good in multitasking, but very often women actually do not take care of their own health, which eventually not only affects them, but also affects the whole family. So if I can share my screen, advanced sharing options. No, it is not letting me share my screen. Yeah, okay.
No.
Okay, so as I was told that we have a varied spectrum of audience from 25 to 50 plus women, I am going to be talking on a variety of issues, not in too many details about the different various problems that women go through during their midlife. And if anyone feels that you need to know more about a certain topic or discuss a particular issue, then I'll be glad to talk about it in more detail in the Q&A section. So when we talk about women, of course, fertility is the first thing which comes to mind. Women are unique, that they have the capacity or capability to bring a new soul or a new life into this world. Although they have to go through a lot of hardship doing that. And, it's a, what it shouldn't say it's a pity, it is a great honor to be having the privilege to do so. But pregnancy is not always easy. There are complications which can happen in pregnancy to the mother or to the baby. But at the same time, if you don't get pregnant and do not have children, the pain of infertility is also something which only an infertile couple can understand. I will then talk about some contraceptive issues, period problems which women tend to have during their 30s and 40s, some awareness of cancer. As we are approaching from 40s to 50s, cancer becomes more common as for everybody, and what we can do to prevent cancer, to take care of ourselves if we do develop. And of course, as we approach menopause, what are the issues that come across, and we can help ourselves. So first of all, talking about pregnancy, pregnancy itself is like a book. I mean, there's so much about pregnancy that obviously I cannot talk about everything. So I just picked up a topic that how can we prevent fetal anomalies or fetal defects for any couple or any mother to be, when you are planning for a pregnancy or you're pregnant. One major issue that you're worried about is my baby going to be healthy? Will my baby suffer from any disability, any problems, any birth defects? And as far as possible, everybody wants to have a normal, healthy baby. So, what can we do before starting pregnancy? And that is why we encourage women to see a doctor or see a gynecologist or an obstetrician before planning pregnancy, so that you know what all can be done before planning a pregnancy. So, starting with screening, doing some tests before pregnancy. Well, we are in a part of the world where thalassemia is commoner. So we say that instead of looking at the Janam Patri, दो लोग की जन्म पत्री मिलाने से अच्छा है that we do a test for thalassemia for the couple, primarily for the lady who is going to get pregnant. And if we do find that she is thalassemia minor, because thalassemia minors do not have any problem in their day-to-day life, so they never know that they are carrying a gene of thalassemia. So, but the problem when you're planning a pregnancy is that if both mother and father to be have the trait or the gene for thalassemia, then they have a 25% risk of producing a baby which can be thalassemia major. And nobody wants a thalassemia major baby. It is the life is really hell, because they have to go through blood transfusions all their life. And now, of course, children are living up to the age where they can even get married, but it is not easy to go through that journey with a thalassemia major. So simply doing a blood test can tell you whether you're carrying the thalassemia gene or not. There are other tests that we can do on blood, like we can check for any past syphilitic infection in the mother. And if the mother has infection, normally we test for both, for the husband and wife. If the mother has infection, then she should be treated before she embarks on a pregnancy, preferably. We check for immunity status for rubella. This is German measles. The technical name is rubella. So we give the children vaccination, MMR nowadays, which is measles, mumps, and rubella. But many children may not be fortunate to have that vaccine in their childhood. Or sometimes you do not convert, you do not always make antibodies. The reason for us to check rubella before pregnancy is because we do not want that the lady should have rubella infection during pregnancy, which has a very high risk of causing fetal birth defects in the baby. In case a couple has a baby which is already affected, has a genetic defect, in such cases, we can help the couple to make sure that they have a normal baby next time by identifying the problem or the genetic defect which exists in the baby which is there. And then we can look for the same gene. Either we can do an IVF and look in the embryo and actually dissect a normal embryo and have a normal baby. Or if a patient gets, or a woman gets pregnant, we can actually look for that gene. I will tell you a little bit more detail, but we can look for that gene. And though we cannot cure it, but if we do find that gene, then we can terminate that pregnancy so that we do not bring an abnormal baby into this world. Other important issues that we must understand when we are planning a pregnancy, that if you're a diabetic and it is not well controlled, that itself can cause birth defects. Being very overweight also has a tendency to produce more birth defects. So a healthy lifestyle is important at any and every stage of life. I cannot emphasize more on this, that whether you are young, you're old, a healthy lifestyle actually can save you a lot of visits to the hospital and the doctor. And if you are taking any medication before pregnancy, like there are women who are suffering from epilepsy, जिनको दौरे आते हैं, fit पड़ते हैं, कुछ लोगों को blood pressure होता है, some people have kidney disease. All these patients, they may be on some medication, And what we can do before they plan pregnancy is to make sure that they are taking a medication which is the safest for the baby. Because some medicines have a higher risk of producing birth defects when they are consumed in the first 3 months of pregnancy. So we can make sure that we switch them over to the safest medicine that is available to treat that disease. What can we do during pregnancy? And actually, these a lot of these tests, which I'm going to tell you, are done now universally for everybody. Of course, in smaller towns and villages, these are still not available. But in a place like Delhi or NCR, almost everybody who visits a hospital for antenatal care or pregnancy care would probably go through these tests. So what all can we do during pregnancy to look for birth defects? So there can be chromosomal defects. See, when the chromosomes of the egg and the sperm meet and fuse and create a new unique karyotype, a lot of things can go wrong. It's a very, very delicate process. And like, in any factory, not all pieces that are manufactured are normal. There will be some rejection rate. So some embryos will be faulty. This is not 100% sort of in nature that all embryos will be normal. So you can have chromosomal defects in the fetus or in the newborn. And as the mother's age increases, that is very, very important. You tend to have more chromosomal defects because the eggs are older and they are poorer in quality. So when we talk about chromosomal defects, the most important chromosomal defect we talk about is Down syndrome. The reason being that a lot of chromosomal defects, when the embryo is not normal, the pregnancy will automatically get terminated as a miscarriage, or the baby will not survive when the baby is born. So Down syndrome is a condition where the baby can survive and achieve its normal lifespan. But these babies have multiple physical and mental abnormalities. They can be mentally challenged. They can have heart defects. They can have several problems, delayed milestones. So we, as obstetricians, we actually have a major focus in making sure that Down syndrome fetus is not, it can be diagnosed, not missed, and that we can terminate this pregnancy. So what do we do to look for Down syndrome? The first test is an ultrasound, which is done at 11 to 13 weeks, where we can see some measurements which are more commonly seen in Down syndrome babies. There is a blood test. The double marker is just measuring two hormones in the blood, two pregnancy hormones. And combined with age, there is actually a risk scoring given. This test does not tell you whether this baby is normal or not. It tells you, it's a screening test. It tells you whether has a high risk of having Down syndrome or not. And if it does show a high risk of Down syndrome, then a diagnostic test is either a chorionic villus sampling or amniocentesis. Either we can take a little piece of biopsy from the placenta after about 11 to 12 weeks, or we can take a little bit water outside. It's just a needle prick into the tummy, and we look at the baby, and while doing ultrasound, we put a needle and take some 15-20 ml of fluid around the baby. And from this, we can actually culture the baby's cells, and we can find out whether this baby is normal or not. And if the baby is abnormal, then we are allowed to terminate the pregnancy up till 20 weeks, as the law exists as of now in India. NIPT is a new test. The good thing about it, it is not invasive like CVS and amniocentesis. NIPT is done on blood. And now we know for the last decade or two that the baby's cells can be found in the maternal blood. They are shed and they get into the maternal blood. And you can actually look at those baby's cells and look for any defects like Down syndrome. This is still not considered as 100%. Gold standard is CVS or amniocentesis, but it does give you a very good idea whether this baby is affected or not. The other defects that we look for during pregnancy routinely are neural tube defects. Neural tube defects means to do with the brain and the spine. The good thing is most of these gross defects can be picked up on a good ultrasound. Now, when I say good ultrasound, that is also not something which is universally available in a country like ours or in many low and middle income countries. Because in a city like Delhi, you can have the best ultrasonologists in the world, but not in the periphery, they may not be ultrasonologists which may be able to diagnose a neural tube defect. Although this can be, with a good ultrasound, it can be almost in 98, 99%, you can pick up a neural tube defect and terminate this pregnancy. Then again, a good ultrasonologist can pick up some structural defects in the baby. And if there is a history of a previous baby being affected, then of course you're specifically looking for those problems. But otherwise also in a pregnancy, if you find some structural deformities in the baby, they might indicate some genetic syndromes which can be diagnosed and terminated during pregnancy. In pregnancy, we cannot actually treat these conditions. Most of these conditions are not treatable, and the only solution we have is to terminate the pregnancy. That is what we need to understand. Talking about female fertility, which is my favorite subject. So, female fertility, I do a lot of public lectures for young girls, for these corporates where girls from between 20 and 30, 35, they are working. And most of them are completely unaware of fertility. They will actually not think of getting married till the age of 35, 37, 40, because they want to have a good career and then they want to settle down and have a family. Something very, very important we need to understand as females, that the female fertility is very time bound. And we cannot say that, okay, let me finish my studies, my career, settle down in my career and then plan for a pregnancy. We cannot live life in compartments. Everything will have to go together. So to impress upon that, we need to understand that the monthly conception rate between 20 to 30 years is 20 to 25%. And after 35, it falls to less than 10%. That means when I say 20, 25%, that is the peak fertility. Nature does not give any better fertility than this. So around 25 is the peak fertility, which means that if there were 100 couples trying for a pregnancy in a given cycle or a given month, only 25 people will get pregnant. So we need to understand that we cannot delay childbearing to a stage where the eggs are not good quality and there are very few eggs left. So what is the reason for this declining ovarian reserve with age? If you, in contrast, if you look at men, then men are making sperms on an ongoing basis. That is the most basic difference between men and women as far as fertility is concerned, that women, we are born with all the eggs that we will ever have, whereas men are making sperms on an ongoing basis. So that is why if you are 20 years old, you have a next number of eggs, and by the time you're 30 years old, you have almost lost 80 to 85% of your eggs. That is the quantity. Also, the quality of eggs is not the same as we get older. So ovarian reserve, basically, if you see that we are born with about 50, 100,000 eggs, and by the time you start your first period, you're only left with 500,000. So these eggs are degenerating. And by the time you have menopause, about 1,000 eggs are left, but these are such poor quality, they do not grow and they do not get fertilized. So fertility is very low starting about 10 years before menopause, because a lot of girls feel that they're still having regular periods. Why can't they get pregnant? Because the eggs are, the quantity and the quality both goes down with age. This is a very nice fertility calendar, which shows you at different ages how you have a different quantity of eggs. So if you see that by 25, the monthly live birth rate is at the peak, and after that it starts to decline. And if you see by the time you're 30, it says 12% of your eggs remain. That means 80 to 85% or 85 to 90% eggs are gone by the time you're 30. And girls nowadays don't even plan to get married before 35, what about starting a family or having a pregnancy. And that is the reason that in NCR, we must be having at least 500 IVF centers. Because by the time girls plan, their fertility is low and then they end up having IVF. So like I said, peak female fertility is till the age of 25, and about 10% couples worldwide would require some assistance to get pregnant. And this increases to 20% as the age increases. And in towns, it can increase up to 50%. There was a study from Bangalore, somewhere in the IT crowd, and they saw that 1 in 2 people could not conceive without medical treatment. So the incidence of infertility or subfertility, which is about 10% worldwide, can go up to 50% as the age increases. On the other hand, of course, we are worried about fertility and having children. Everybody wants to have their own biological child. But at the same time, there are people where it is a problem that they do not want to have more pregnancies, because more pregnancies means more children to be taken care of, to be brought up, schooling, this, that. And also it takes a toll on the woman's body. So contraception is equally important for those who have children. And unfortunately, the men do not take responsibility. This is an Indian context. 75% men do not use contraception. These are Indian figures. So in the last 8 years, I was actually shocked to read these myself, that said condom use had declined by 52% and vasectomies fell by 73% in the last 8 years. This is the census from India. So the burden of contraception is basically on females, because they are the ones who have to carry the pregnancy and go through the pregnancy. And another very concerning problem is that a lot of women, if you ask about women, how many percent of women are using contraception? So roughly about 45 to 50% seem to be using some kind of contraception, though may not be so regularly. But a lot of women are actually using these MTP pills, which are so easily available now, to abort pregnancies rather than prevent pregnancies, which is very, very unfortunate, because abortion, even if it occurs with tablets, can never be as safe as using contraception. If I give you some figures, then 10% women will have complications of having an abortion. 68,000 women worldwide die of abortion related complications every year, of which 20,000 are contributed by India. And I'm pretty sure 20,000 is actually a low figure. It must be much more, because these are figures which come up for publication. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot many women who have complications die who are never registered as abortion related deaths. And one woman dies every 2 hours in India. So we keep emphasizing as obstetrician that please use contraception. Nobody dies of contraception, but there is a certain serious risk of having abortion related complications or death. There are a lot of myths about contraception, because like I said, women will have multiple abortions and sometimes have problems. But when you tell them to use contraception, then they will come up with 10 questions. Will it have side effects? Will it have difficulty in conceiving? With the pills, we have just about 5 to 10% uptake of the oral contraceptive pills, which are actually very effective as contraceptive and also give some other health benefits. But most women are worried. If you prescribe pills, they will say, will I gain weight? Will I develop cancer because of the pills? With IUCD, people are worried about bleeding and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say is that there's so many myths with contraception. And I always tell people that, listen, if the any contraception had very serious side effects, then it would never be approved by any health authority as a contraception. Because contraception you are giving to healthy people for spacing, to prevent a pregnancy and childbirth. If the contraceptive had serious side effects, then who would use it? I mean, आप अच्छे भले लोगों को बीमार थोड़ी करोगे. If you are sick, suppose you have cancer or TB or any disease, and the doctor prescribes a medicine, and even if you have side effects, you still have to take it. But when you're giving contraception, then it is being given to healthy people. So nobody would be giving a contraceptive method to a healthy person to create a problem. So by and large, they are safe. Of course, some people will have some problem with some contraceptive, like you can have with anything. A tablet of paracetamol, you can have problem. So with that, you cannot sort of think that every contraceptive is going to have problem. Now, emergency contraceptives have been available for quite some time, which is actually a boon in preventing pregnancies, which happen due to unscheduled contact, particularly rape victims, or you just have one-off sexual contact and you're not prepared and you're not on contraceptives. So it actually helps reduce the risk of having a pregnancy from a unprotected sexual contact. But again, I see so many girls and young women who take regularly emergency contraceptives. They take these eye pills maybe once or twice a month, every month. And I fail to understand their psyche, because they're using the same hormones which are there in the regular contraceptive pill in a much higher dose with a lower efficacy. Because anything which is used for emergency can never be as effective or as good as a regular contraceptive. आप इमरजेंसी में कोई चीज खरीदने जाते हो तो आपको महंगी भी मिलती है और अच्छी भी नहीं मिलती. When you plan something, then it is definitely much more sort of efficacious. So they can have side effects simply because you have to take a much higher dose of hormone to prevent a pregnancy with an unscheduled contact than you would need for a regular contraception. So they are in general not as effective as regular contraceptives. So please, I urge everybody, all women, whether they are in a regular sexual relationship or married or unmarried, that if you are sexually active, you should be using a regular contraceptive, which is much more effective, less side effects, and certainly will prevent the pregnancy better than an emergency contraceptive. I now come upon a different topic altogether. So, well, in women across all ages, actually, if you see right from adolescent to up to the menopause, and sometimes even after menopause, period problems are something which are very, very common. When I say period problems, we are generally more worried about heavier bleeding, because you're bleeding, you're losing hemoglobin, and that is not good for your entire health. So when we say irregular periods, the periods could be early, could be late, could be heavy, could be scanty. What bothers us more? Like I said, heavy bleeding is generally, you are more worried. But in young girls and women, you many times you see that the periods are very irregular. They are having periods every 2 months, 3 months. Some people don't get a period until and unless they take some medicine to bring on a period. Majority of these girls have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'm sure you must have heard it. It has become very, very popular, because in the Indian subcontinent, we almost about 15% girls will have polycystic ovaries. It's not a disease that you can cure. We always had polycystic ovaries. It's nothing new, but it is becoming a major issue now. In any given, have at least 3 patients coming with complaints of polycystic ovaries, and now they actually come and tell you, ma'am, I've got polycystic ovaries and I've got excessive hair, I've got irregular period. So why is this problem increasing? Genetically, it is not increasing, but it is increasing because of a poor lifestyle, because the weight of the girls and women is increasing, which increases the hormonal imbalance even more than what is there sort of genetically. So polycystic ovarian syndrome, I'm not going to go into too many details, but what you need to understand that it is something which is in your genetic constitution. You cannot cure it, but with maintaining your weight, maintaining diet which is low in carbs, having a regular exercise, keeping yourself physically active, you may not have any problem to do with PCOS. Whatever problems can occur will not occur, or less likely to occur, if you can simply maintain a healthy lifestyle. Then irregular periods can happen following a pregnancy. I'm not going to go into details of that. Fibroids. Again, a lot of people would have heard what are fibroids. These are benign tumors. They are not cancerous. They are benign tumors which occur from the muscle wall of the uterus. And the again, this is something which is becoming more common because coming back to the same story that women don't get married and get pregnant in the age that nature wants them to be, and they continue to have, you know, periods. What happens with periods? The hormones are going up and down and bounding on the uterus, and then they start producing little tumors. So if somebody is not going to get married till the age of 35 to 40 and have a pregnancy, it's not about marriage, it's actually about pregnancy, not going to have a pregnancy till about 35 to 40 years, then almost 50 to 60% women will develop fibroids. So, you know, I mean, our older books, gynecology books, used to start the chapter on fibroids saying, if you're not making babies, you're making fibroids. Fortunately, not all fibroids cause problem, but they can cause very heavy bleeding. If they're inside the cavity, they can cause miscarriages, they can cause problems with fertility or getting pregnant, but not all fibroids cause problems. You can have irregular bleeding because of irregular intake of contraceptive pills. So polycystic ovarian syndrome, so I just said that you can have periods at irregular, usually longer intervals. Then girls have excessive facial and body hair. These are all features of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Not everybody has all the features, and they also happen in different severity. Like some people have very severe acne, some people have very a lot of facial hair. So all these are with polycystic ovarian syndrome, because there is what happens in polycystic ovarian syndrome, you tend to make a little bit more male hormone from the ovaries. And that is how all these male hormone effects start appearing. When you get pregnant, there might be a problem with fertility because the eggs don't grow and they don't mature and get released. But like I said, and later on in life, there is an increased risk of diabetes and uterine cancer. But like I said, if you can just keep your weight, अगर आप एक चीज को संभाल लें कि वजन नहीं बढ़े आपका, कि आप एक्सरसाइज करें रेगुलरली, अगर आप ऑफिस जाती हैं पास में है तो प्लीज पैदल चल के जाएं, बिकॉज यू नो इन द अर्बन लाइफ नाउ डेज पीपल जस्ट गेट आउट ऑफ द कार से उतर के आप कॉलेज में बैठ जाते हैं, कॉलेज से फिर आप वापस गाड़ी में घर आते हैं, then at home, you know, the kind of work we do now, we're cooking for 1 hour, there's hardly any calorie loss. So we have to understand that we are actually ruining ourselves with this poor sedentary lifestyle. And then we consume a lot of rich food, lot of junk food. So jitna bhi hum ye aata, maida consume karte hain, that is what actually increases the insulin levels, increases body fat, increases weight, and causes all these problems. Even with people who don't have PCOS, this is bad, but particularly if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, you just cannot afford to increase weight and have junk food. So fibroids, like I said, these are muscle tumors in the muscle. So if you can appreciate, this is the muscle layer of the uterus. So these are all small cell fibroids. The ones which are inside the uterus, these are the ones which actually cause havoc in terms of bleeding. They can give you very, very heavy bleeding. Most of the fibroids which are outside do not usually cause any symptoms unless they grow very big and cause problems with their weight and other issues. Otherwise, mainly only the ones which are inside, these are the ones which cause problems. Another problem associated with periods, which almost all of us have gone through, is painful periods. So it is not unusual to have some amount of discomfort and pain during periods, which usually doesn't last for more than a few hours or a day or so. And if you just take a painkiller, it is fine. So most women actually don't take a painkiller. You know, this is also a very big myth. If you have a headache, you don't mind taking a tablet. But if you're having period pains, then you don't want to take a tablet. There are so many myths surrounding कि गोली खाओगे तो आगे pregnancy नहीं होगी, कुछ hormones गड़बड़ हो जाएंगे. So a lot of myths surrounding, you know, when you have pain, women generally will suffer and not take a painkiller, which actually doesn't do any harm at all. But like I said, most people will have, you know, just pain, maybe maybe not even needing a painkiller, or maybe take a painkiller on the day one of period. But sometimes the pain can be very severe. Another myth that is there, which I just wrote to, sort of put across, is sometimes even doctors say that, and I feel very sorry that somebody, if a young girl comes to them and she's having severe pain, which is probably not getting better with painkillers, they will say, oh, once you get married and have a baby, your pain will be okay. एक बार बच्चा हो जाएगा, पहले वो कहते हैं कि शादी हो जाएगी तो पीरियड पेन ठीक हो जाएगा, then they say बच्चा हो जाएगा तो ठीक हो जाएगा. It's actually a myth. It's got nothing to do with marriage and childbirth. So you should take a painkiller if you're having pain which is more than tolerable. And there's another point. When you have pain and you know you will need a painkiller, take it when the pain starts. Most people wait till it is unbearable and then they take a painkiller, and then it doesn't help so much. फिर वो इतनी जल्दी असर नहीं करता. So you need to take a painkiller when you start having the pain. If your pain is not controlled with simple painkillers, and when I say painkillers, you can take anything, paracetamol, ibuprofen, the common painkillers that we take. So, but in some girls, the painkillers are not enough to control their pain. Then the next line of treatment that we use as gynecologists is to give them on oral contraceptive pills. So the oral contraceptive pills are used for contraception, but we actually use them as medication for a lot of gynae problems. So again, because they are safe, we can give them to young girls, because like in Western countries where the girls are sexually active very young, they start taking these oral contraceptive pills at very young age. So anyway, I'm just giving that example to tell you that it is safe. So the next thing is the sorry, why is it changing? Why is it jumping? Oh my God, just a minute. Okay, so, and usually the pain will be controlled with oral contraceptive pills. If it is not, in these women or young girls, they might be suffering from endometriosis, which is a condition which can give quite severe pain during periods. And sometimes when it gets worse, the pain can be throughout the cycle, or, intermittently throughout the month, and not just with periods. So endometriosis, like fibroids, is again another condition which is becoming very, very common in our country now. When we were postgraduates, we were told, हमारे यहाँ तो होता नहीं endometriosis. It is a problem of the Western countries. हमारे यहाँ तो endometriosis होता ही नहीं है. It's a white race problem. But the reason was because earlier, and even now in villages and small towns, the girls get married early, and by the time you are 20, you already have had a baby. But earlier it was the norm. And now, of course, girls don't get married till 30, 35. So why does endometriosis occur? Simply because you don't get, it's not about marriage, it is about having a pregnancy. So why does endometriosis occur when you don't have a pregnancy in time when you should? So endometriosis is basically the lining of the uterus. It implants outside the uterus. It can implant on the ovaries or anywhere inside your tummy. There can be implants of endometrium. Endometrium is the lining of the uterus, which lines the uterus. And every month, this lining sheds off when you have a period. So what happens? When you have a period, most of the blood will go out through the vagina because there's an open end. But little bit blood also seeps through the tubes into the tummy, because tubes are also connected to the uterus, and the other end is connected to the ovaries, which is inside the tummy to pick up an egg from the ovary. So a little bit blood goes into the tummy during period. Now, it may be just a 1 or 2 ml, and most of the time there is no problem. It simply gets absorbed and nature takes care of it. But problem arises when, the period after period are happening and there is no break. Like I said earlier, most women would have a child by the age of 20. So they started having periods at 14, and by the time they were 19, 20, they had a pregnancy. So pregnancy, 9 months, you don't have a period. Then if you're breastfeeding exclusively, again, you don't have periods, maybe for 9 months, 1 year. And if you ask your grandmothers, dadi, nani, many of them hardly had any periods, they were either pregnant or they were breastfeeding. So पूरी जिंदगी में 200-250 period नहीं आते थे. अभी क्या होता है, शादी से पहले 300 पीरियड आ जाते हैं, because you don't plan a pregnancy till 30, 35, and you are having these periods every month. So this blood which seeps in, it has got glands from the endometrium lining. And if these glands take root wherever they fall, they then start behaving like the lining in the uterus. So every time you have a period and there is bleeding in the uterus, there is also bleeding from these implants. And that is how you can develop, some of you must have heard of chocolate cysts. So chocolate cysts are nothing but old blood collecting in the ovaries. And little by little, the blood collects over years and months, and you have formed these chocolate cysts. And once the chocolate cyst or endometriosis happens, one, it can cause very severe pain. Other, it can cause problems with conception, getting pregnant. So initially, endometriosis occurs because you do not have pregnancy by the time you should have had, as nature wants it. And then once you have endometriosis, then you don't get pregnant. So it's a vicious cycle. पहले आप pregnant होना नहीं चाहते, फिर endometriosis हो जाती है, वो आपको pregnant होने नहीं देती. So it's a vicious cycle. So anyway, of course, if somebody has endometriosis, needs to see a gynecologist. I cannot go into the treatment part of it, but I do want girls to be aware that if you delay childbearing too long, then it is not just something, like about having a child at later age, but it can also cause medical problems with you. Talking about cancer prevention. So although we need to be aware from a young age, most cancers will not happen before the age of 50. So in a way, cancer is also like an aging disease, because what is cancer? I always explain that if you have, I hope I'm seen on the screen. So if you see my hand, if 10 cells grow here every day, 10 will die. And that is how my skin remains flat. If 10 cells new grow, but the 10 which are supposed to die don't die, then slowly this will get raised and there'll be a tumor. So cancer is nothing but once the balance between cell growth and cell death is disturbed, you have tumors. And if these tumors spread, then they are cancer. If they're localized, they might be benign tumors or non-cancerous tumors, but if they have the potential to spread, then it is cancer. So cancer definitely, although rarely you will find cancer in young people, but majority of cancer actually occurs in older age group. What about women? If we talk about cancer in women, the two most important cancers in women are breast and cervix. Till now, cervix was the commonest cancer in women. If you saw throughout the country, even cervix is commonly used in the country as a whole. But if you look at the metros, can you please mute yourself? Please mute yourself. Okay. So, but in the metros, breast has now taken over cervix. Again, why is breast taken over in metros is again reasons. Some of the reasons are again to do with lifestyle. If you do not have a pregnancy and do not breastfeed a baby, if you do not have pregnancy by the age of 25 or 30, when you're supposed to have and breastfeed a baby, your incidence of breast cancer increases. So again, it has partly to do with lifestyle. Anyway, the lifetime risk of cancer in India is 1 in 20. That means if you are going to live long enough, 1 in 20 women will get breast cancer. So age is the most important risk factor. Like I explained to you, that cancer is something which becomes more likely as you get older. Other risk factors, like I said, if you don't have a child till in your younger age, or if you have very few children who do not breastfeed, weight also has a problem. Like women who are overweight, they consume very rich, high calorie diet, they are at increased risk of developing breast cancer. Even alcohol adds to the risk of breast cancer. So all these are modifiable risk factors. Of course, some people have genetic risk factors which you cannot modify, but majority of the risk factors are actually modifiable, which can reduce the risk of breast cancer. And that's the reason why women in metros have a high risk of breast cancer. So, well, how can we prevent, plan a pregnancy in time, breastfeed the baby? It's not just good for the baby, it's the best food for the baby, but it's also good for you because it prevents breast cancer. Watch your weight. Weight is not a sign of prosperity. Weight is actually a problem at any age. So, we are so fortunate in India. We have fresh fruit, fresh food. Most of us do get fresh food at home. Although the newer generation is now following the West, when they don't want to cook, they want to get canned food, just heat it up, or buy or get junk food from outside, heat it up and eat it. But that's really bad. Do not lose the good things from our culture. This fresh food that we take, that we make at home in India, actually saves a lot of health problems. Regular exercise, very very important. Like I said, if you don't have time, if you can walk to your workplace, please walk. Make sure that you have time for exercise, like you have time for everything else. You have to make time for exercise. Of course, since it is such a common cancer, and even more than India, in West, the lifetime risk is 1 in 8. It is very, very common. So how can we do something to prevent as far as screening is concerned? Let me first explain to you what is screening. Screening means that you are doing a test for a condition which you do not have, and you have no symptoms of that disease, but you are screening to detect that condition either in very early stage, or to detect some changes which may lead to that problem. So screening is done in healthy people to diagnose a precursor of that condition or that condition. So what all can we do in terms of breast cancer? You can do a self breast examination. In fact, we teach even young girls in college to be aware of their breast. Look at their breast in front of a mirror and feel your breast to see if there is any lump. There is a little downside because sometimes they're just very benign lumps, and girls get very worried, or they're not examining properly. But if you do feel that there is something which was not there earlier, you can see a doctor and let him or her examine you. Mammogram is a kind of X-ray which is done for the breast to look for any sort of nidus or any focus where it may be a very early stage cancer. And ultrasound nowadays we add to mammogram to particularly in young women. It actually reduces the false positive rate. That means you can diagnose a lot of conditions by ultrasound which are not serious. Mammogram picks up something and then you start getting worried, but if you add ultrasound, it will actually exclude many of the conditions which are not serious. So this is just a slide to show you how to palpate your breast. Basically, when you palpate your breast, what you're trying to do is you're trying to, breasts have a lot of fat. It's basically a pad of fat, with some glands. So how you palpate your breast is that you're trying to roll this pad of fat between your palm and the ribs below. So when you roll it, you should not be feeling anything. If you try and hold it, everywhere you will feel a lump, but that is wrong. You just roll the breast tissue, all over, go in a systematic way and feel, and then finally the nipple, and there should be no abnormal discharge from the nipple. So if you feel for the entire breast and you feel nothing, then you know that there is nothing to worry. The best time to do a breast examination in women who are menstruating is to do immediately after a period, because when you're coming on, when you're nearing a period, the breasts become tender, because every month nature is preparing the breast for a pregnancy. When you menstruate and there's no pregnancy, then those changes go back to normal. So the best time to palpate is to do it immediately after periods, when your breasts are light and they're not tender to touch also. So mammography, like I said, is an X-ray, which there are various guidelines. In a country like ours, we can't be really targeting every woman to be having a mammogram. So that is why it is important that you should be aware of your breast and feel your breast. And if there's something you feel that wasn't there, then go see a doctor. But if you look at the Western countries like US, then they advise that women should be doing mammogram once in 2 years after the age of 50. Some people even advise at 40. But actually that's an overkill, because too much investigation also leads to unnecessary interventions. Like I said, mammogram best combined with ultrasound to give the best information in young women, because young women tend to have heavier and dense breasts. So sometimes mammogram may be confusing, and ultrasound will help take away a lot of queries. Okay, cervical cancer. Like I said, it is the commonest if you take the whole of India, but in metros, breast is number one. Uh, so India contributes to 25% of cases of cervical cancer in the world. And these are the latest figures from India. In 2018, 60,000 women died of cervical cancer, which means that 150 to 200 women die every day in India, and nobody talks about it. If one plane goes down with 200 people, you see the news for the next 1 week in the TV channels and newspapers that 200 people died. But 200 women die every day in India of cervical cancer, and we don't talk about it. And the other thing is that this is the only cancer which is completely preventable, and we still don't do enough to prevent it. In Western countries like UK, Europe, and US, they also had a similar incidence, what we have of cervical cancer now. But simply with screening for cervical cancer, there is a 70% reduction in cervical cancer cases in these countries, simply by regular screening, which is instituted by the National Health Services there. So what are the risk factors for cervical cancer? Well, like, there are some problems which come with having pregnancies and sexual activity at later age. Then this is one which comes with early age. But it is more so if you have multiple sexual partners. If you are in a monogamous relationship, then even at early age, it is not so much worrisome. So multiple sexual partners, and those who have partners, partners who have more partners, and you don't know who has what infection, then you tend to have a high risk for cervical cancer. Pregnancy at very early age, multiple pregnancy, that means if you have too many pregnancies, that increases the risk of cervical cancer. Low socioeconomic class, smoking, all these risks increase the risk of cervical cancer. How can we prevent cervical cancer? Pap smear is simply, somebody examines your cervix, you go to a gynecologist, she looks at your cervix. Even looking at the cervix actually is a very big advantage, because if there's something wrong, at least it is diagnosed early. Anyway, pap smear is you look at the cervix and you just take some little smear of just the secretions from your cervix. It is not invasive. You're not putting a needle or anything. You're just taking the secretions, putting on a slide and sending to the pathologist. The problem with pap smear is you need to have pathologists around to read those pap smears. Nowadays, we know that HPV is the virus which has to infect to have cervical cancer. So you can directly look for the HPV on the pap smear, on the cervix. Like you take pap smear, you can take a test to diagnose whether you have an HPV infection or not. And of course, now there is HPV vaccine. Nowadays that we're talking so much about COVID vaccine, HPV vaccine has been there for quite some time, and it is effective in preventing cervical cancer. We have now a lot of data, and all these measures, if they are taken, then we can almost eliminate this cancer. It is possible to eliminate it simply by screening and vaccination. So when should screening start? The screening should start from the age 25 to 65. Every 3 years, if you're doing only pap smears. If you can do an HPV test with pap smear, it is done. It needs to be done only every 5 years. But HPV testing is started only at the age of 30. So, but I get regularly patients, from very educated patients in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, who have never had a pap smear. So you see the kind of awareness we have for a simple test. I'm sorry, I'm going to recall something and tell you. I went to this place, where was West Indies, and we were traveling from Kingston to Ocho Rios, a place. It was a beautiful highway, but what was the most important thing? I mean, what was the most interesting thing that I saw on the highway? Like we have these big hoardings showing jewelry and sari advertisements. There was a huge hoarding on the highway which said, "Have you had a pap smear?" I mean, look at the kind of awareness they generate. I mean, we are supposed to be better than the West Indian countries, that we are more developed than them. But in terms of awareness, they are actually more developed than us. Anyway, if you're going for a pap smear, you should not be having your periods. In fact, you should have had periods finished a few days before, so that there's no blood, no vaginal creams must be used for 24 hours, and no sexual contact must happen in 24 hours. Because if it happens, then when you take the secretions, then you don't actually get the cells from the cervix, but you're getting some vaginal cream, or you're getting some semen sample. So that is not that we need. About vaccination, so vaccine can prevent about 70% of cancer, which means that screening, whether in terms of whether you want to do it as a pap smear or HPV, like I said, you can either do both or you can do one. It still has to be done because it will not prevent 100% of cancer. The reason being that there are a number of HPV viruses which can cause cancer, and the vaccine is not effective against all those strains. So it does work against major strains, and that is why it can prevent 70% of cancer. It is actually, now we have this data saying that if everybody could be vaccinated, and we could achieve like 70% of pap smear, then we could almost eliminate cervical cancer. But that's a huge goal to be achieved, in at least at this time in India. I don't think we are going to achieve it in the near future. So what is the age of vaccination? So vaccination can be taken from around 11 to 12 years. It can even be taken by girls 9 years of age, but usually we say 11 to 12 years is the age when you should start vaccination. But what is most important to understand is that it should be taken before you are exposed to sexual activity. Because once you have sexual activity, some amount of HPV infection is going to be there, which you cannot prevent. There are no symptoms of HPV infection, but it just comes with sexual activity. Most of the time, body takes care of it and gets rid of the infection also. But sometimes when the infection lingers on, some people can actually develop cervical cancer. So the best age of any vaccine is before you have that condition, or whether before you get that disease, that is the best time. So in case of HPV, it should be best given before sexual exposure. It can be taken up to women up to 26 years of age, but there is not much benefit in vaccinating older women. So if you are up to age of 15, then you can take 2 doses of the vaccine. And if you're older, then you need 3 doses of the vaccine. Okay, so this is the last part of, it's almost getting 1 hour. This is just the last part of my talk on issues surrounding the menopause. Typically, the symptoms that you can get because of menopause, not everybody gets symptoms during menopause. That is one thing we need to understand. But if you see what is the most typical symptom, it is hot flashes or hot flushes. That means you suddenly feel hot, mostly in the upper part of your body. You will see sometimes women sitting and suddenly they are sweating, with their hair dripping and their face dripping. Some people have very bad hot flashes, but that is the most typical symptom of menopause. Because of low estrogens, we stop making estrogens after, because the ovaries don't have any eggs left, so there is no estrogen being made from the ovaries. And the female body is so used to having that estrogen around that we start having these vasomotor disturbances. Painful intercourse, because if there's no estrogens, there is no lubrication in the vagina. You can have sleep disturbances, psychological problems. And medically, if you see what serious problems, then you are at increased risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, or weak bones, and cancer. Cancer, of course, is to do with age, not to do with menopause. So heart disease, well, if you compare men and women, then you seldom hear that somebody who is not had menopause, a young woman dying of heart attack. But men die of heart attack at any age. So basically, the estrogens that we produce from the ovaries are protective for the heart. That is why women do not have heart attacks before, or coronary heart disease before menopause generally, unless they have some other issue. But after menopause, the risk of having heart disease or heart attack is the same as you would have in men. Other risk factors are weight and smokers. These are what add to the risk of heart disease. So how do we prevent this increased risk, again, regular exercise, low fat and low salt in diet, and maintain weight. As we get older, we should reduce the carbs like roti, bread, chapati, all these things, in our diet, and have more fruits, have milk, but of course, toned milk, and reduce your carbs and reduce fat and salt. That will actually prevent a lot of problems, not just heart disease. Osteoporosis like means porous bones. So no, there are no symptoms in early stages, but you can fracture, very easily with just a little trip, which you wouldn't do in your younger age. Backache, loss of height. And from prevention, you need to have adequate amount of calcium. So after menopause, when the estrogens are gone, then your bones do not keep, the calcium in the bones is not kept so well, in the bones. There is more excretion of calcium. So your calcium requirement increases after menopause. So you can take care of that with milk intake, milk, yogurt, curd. If you can easily consume a liter of milk in a day with yogurt and milk, and you don't need to necessarily take calcium tablets. Adequate amount of vitamin D. That's not a very huge dose of vitamin D. Actually, with regular little bit of sunshine and all that, you should be able to have that much of vitamin D in your daily diet without a tablet. But if you are low on vitamin D, then you might take the supplements. Again, exercise not only helps keep the bones in your keeps the calcium in your bones. The retention of calcium in your bones increases with exercise. What drops with estrogen lack increases with exercise. So regular exercise plus the exercise also maintains muscle strength. So you're less likely to fall. So exercise is important. Smoking again reduces calcium in your bones. So stop smoking, avoid excessive alcohol. All these would actually give you good bone health. And of course, this is the last slide. And this is the final message to all women that work hard. I mean, like I said, women do a lot of multitasking. We are good at multitasking, which men cannot do. We can take care of our home, our professional lives, everything. So at young age, do not be afraid of working hard, but also we should learn to enjoy life. And most important, we need to look after ourselves so that we can actually deliver our best, because many times it happens that men think that women cannot perform as well as men, which is not true. We can perform well. In fact, we can perform better. But to achieve that goal, we need to look after our health, and we need to look after ourselves on a daily basis. Thank you very much. I will stop share.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Like, it was a very good presentation, and बहुत सारे myths हम सब लोगों के clear हुए. सारी ladies के लिए ये बहुत अच्छा है. Even that वो pain वाला चीज कि शादी के बाद कम होगा, तो ऐसे काफी सारे myths थे. और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि आपने इन सब का solution भी हमारे सामने रखा. तो definitely we will work on them. And thank you so much again from our college and from all our team. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we are going for question answer session. So I'm just going to read. Yeah, Khushbu.
Yeah, Swasti. So we both, I think, will be taking the questions, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So maybe I can start. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for such an informative and enlightening session. You packed so much information, crucial information in your lecture.
So much information, actually. I don't know whether it was absorbed or not.
Yes, ma'am. Like, it was absorbed because you presented everything in such a lucid manner. So I'm sure it is well absorbed, and I can see that from the comments that are pouring in. So everybody is appreciating your lecture, and I think the points that you made, it made home. And let's start with the questions. There's Shushma Khurana who's asking, what is the difference between thalassemia minor and major, and what are its effects?
Thalassemia, there is a gene which causes problem in production of the hemoglobin. So this gene, if like genes come in pairs. So if there is one, if you've inherited one gene from either of your parent and you have the other gene which is normal from the other parent, then you do have thalassemia, you are carrier of thalassemia. But if you have one normal gene, that is enough to give you enough hemoglobin for you to survive and, you know, go through your life without any problem. But if both genes are abnormal, that means if both your parents had a thalassemia minor, and of course if the parent normally, you know, earlier you never had children if you were thalassemia major, but now even thalassemia major may have children. So if you get both these genes anyway which are abnormal, usually from one each from each parent, in that case you can actually have thalassemia major. अगर दोनों जीन गड़बड़ है तो हीमोग्लोबिन बनता नहीं है. प्रॉब्लम ये है कि यू नो द हीमोग्लोबिन विच इज इन द इंट्रायूट्राइन लाइफ इज डिफरेंट एंड द अडल्ट लाइफ इज डिफरेंट. सो जो फीटल लाइफ का हीमोग्लोबिन है, दैट इज नॉट, इट इज नॉट मेंट टू टेक ऑक्सीजन एंड फॉर्म हीमोग्लोबिन इन द अडल्ट लाइफ, बिकॉज इंट्रायूट्राइन में तो मदर से आता है, तो वो हीमोग्लोबिन डिफरेंट होता है एंड अडल्ट अलग होता है. तो अडल्ट हीमोग्लोबिन नहीं बनता इन थैलेसीमिया. सो माइनर में इतना ही फर्क होता है कि वो नहीं बनता, लेकिन आपका हीमोग्लोबिन 10 रहेगा या 11 रहेगा, बढ़ेगा, 14 नहीं होगा. इट्स ओके, दैट्स ऑल राइट, यू कैन लिव विद दैट नॉर्मली. बट अगर दोनों जीन्स एबनॉर्मल है तो उसमें आपका हीमोग्लोबिन 2 होगा, 4 होगा, यू कैन नॉट लिव विद दैट हीमोग्लोबिन. You cannot breathe. There's not enough hemoglobin to you know, सांस लेने के लिए ऑक्सीजन काफी नहीं है. ऑक्सीजन तो हीमोग्लोबिन से आती है. So these children need continuous blood transfusion throughout their life. It is very, very miserable.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that so well. And I think that answers Sushma's question.
So both
Yeah.
husband and wife should not have a thalassemia trait. Like I said, जन्म पत्री मिलाने की बजाय अपना चेक करो thalassemia के लिए. It's just a blood test. And if you are a minor, make sure you do not marry another minor. Because if both are minor, then you have a 25% risk of a thalassemia major.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Then there is Muskan. She's asking, ma'am, can a woman suffering from PCOD conceive a healthy pregnancy? And she has another question also. Can UTI infection affects fertility in women? So she has these two
Okay,
questions.
to answer the first part first, that can a woman suffering from PCOD conceive? Absolutely. In fact, like I said, if you go to the villages, it is not such a big problem. Earlier, it was not such. I am a PCOD myself. I had 2 children.
Okay.
But I have never, you know, allowed my weight to go up even, you know, more than a kg, what I should be like normally. So if you maintain your weight, then PCOD is not a disease. You know, it does sort of, there is a problem with the hormones, but those hormones you can maintain in the normal range if you're not overweight, if you exercise. If you're not overweight, doesn't mean you don't have to exercise. You have to exercise. If you exercise regularly, if you do not eat junk food, if you maintain your weight, then lakhs of PCOD women will conceive themselves. In fact, a lot of my people, you know, my manager in the clinic, she makes fun and she says that Dr. Renu to poche laga ke pregnant kara deti hain. Because women who are overweight, you know, I tell them just do physical exercise, and you may not need anything actually. You might just get pregnant yourself. So, and the other part, can UTI affect fertility? No, not really. UTI is a urinary tract infection, like you can have infection in any part of the body, so that you can have urinary tract. And if you take antibiotics, do a urine culture, take the right antibiotic, and you'll be fine.
Okay. Yes. Oh, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, I also have one question which is a little bit related to what Muskan just asked. I'm just curious to know if, you know, there are any scientific studies which relate how PCOD can be cured, or, you know, how yoga can affect the PCOD
Yeah, I can
condition.
explain to you.
Yeah.
See, PCOD is not a disease, so it cannot be cured. It's part of a genetic constitution. See, कोई 5 फुट का है, कोई 6 फुट का है, तो बीमारी तो नहीं है ना. कोई you're fair, I'm dark, बीमारी नहीं है ना. So this is the genetic endowment we have. So similarly, about 15% of girls from the Asian subcontinent, South Asian subcontinent, we have this genes for PCOD. West, अगर आप white race को देखें, Caucasians में, they have only 5% incidence of PCOD, which we have 15%. So
Okay.
the problem you have to understand with PCOD is that we actually all make hormones in the ovaries. You know, ovaries contain eggs, and when the eggs grow, they release hormones. So ovaries are also like endocrine glands. Thyroid से thyroxine बनता है, ऐसे ovaries से estrogen बनता है, and that is linked to the growth of the eggs. So what happens that because we are females, we make a lot of estrogens, which is the female sex hormone. But we also make little bit of male hormone from our ovaries. Similarly, boys make a lot of male hormone from their testes, and they make very little female hormone. So anyway, coming back to female, so we also make little bit of male hormone, and that male hormone also has its uska function hai. Like, you know, the muscle mass. You see these athletes, they're taking injections of these male hormones because it gives them more muscle mass. It gives you sex drive. So we need that little male hormone also. If you didn't have that male hormone, there will be no sex drive. So उसकी जरूरत है. लेकिन अगर वो मेल हार्मोन थोड़ा सा भी ज्यादा बनने लगे, if it is more than normal, then it starts producing all the effects of male hormones. And what does male hormone do in men? Like you see, they have a mustache, they have a beard, they have sideburns. So you start getting hair, you know, on your upper lip, on your chin. So you will not have that many, but all these are male hormone effects. Your hair may start thinning. You may start having temporal balding. Again, male hormone effects. You may have a few hair, and these are dark hair, you know, not the body thin hair on your breast, on your lower abdomen. Again, these are areas where men have hair and women don't. So you have all this. Okay, अब वापस आए कि क्यों होता है PCOD. So one is of course like genetic, like I said, male hormone is a little bit more. दूसरा चीज है, when we study the mechanism, how the male hormone is higher, then we know that the insulin levels are higher in people who have PCOD. And insulin increases the production of male hormone from the ovaries. एक तो baseline है आपका insulin level थोड़ा ज्यादा होता है PCOD में. But if you are overweight, then you start making hormones in your fat, which further pushes your insulin level up. So weight loss और exercise का जो role है वो ऐसे है कि वो आपका insulin level नीचे लाता है. If you are overweight, तभी भी लाता है. If you are not overweight, तब भी insulin level नीचे लाता है. Even who are not overweight, their insulin level is lower. But people who are overweight, उसमें और भी ज़्यादा problem है, जो hormone बनने लगता है उससे fat में. So insulin level नीचे आता है तो male hormone नीचे आता है. तो all these effects, जो visual effects है, आपको वो कम हो जाएंगे. दूसरा problem है, it does not allow the eggs to grow. Egg grow नहीं होगा, release नहीं होगा, तो pregnancy कैसे होगी? So male hormone जो है उसको वो कर रहा है, counteract कर रहा है. Female sex hormone egg को grow कराता है, male hormone grow नहीं करने देता. That is why these ovaries are called polycystic, because में छोटे 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 eggs बहुत सारे अटके होते हैं, because वो grow करके release नहीं होते, तो they're called polycystic. उनका appearance होता है. So main चीज है, आप diet में carbohydrate कम करें, जिससे insulin level बढ़ता है. So रोटी, चावल, bread, pizza, pasta, all these increase your insulin level. जो भी प्योर ग्लूकोज लेवल बढ़ाएगा वो इंसुलिन लेवल बढ़ाएगा. डाइट में आप कार्ब्स कम करो, हैव लॉट्स ऑफ फ्रूट्स, वेजीज, दाल खाओ, दूध पियो, एंड एक्सरसाइज. सो एक्सरसाइज एंड अ डाइट इन लो कार्ब्स will reduce your insulin level, and that is how it will give you a positive environment for your ovaries. And like I said, you may not need any treatment to get pregnant or even for other things.
Thank you, ma'am. Grishma is asking one very practical question here. She's asking, what specific test would you recommend to diagnose infertility, and what will these tests cost one?
My dear, infertility is a very wide topic. You know, infertility is not, एक चीज नहीं है कि PCOD है infertility. Infertility, somebody may be having PCOD, not ovulating, so she has infertility. Somebody's tubes might be blocked, so she has infertility. किसी के husband के sperms नहीं है तो इसको infertility है. किसी को endometriosis हो गई तो इनको infertility है. So there is no one test. You have to see a doctor and the doctor has to decide what is your problem and what tests need to be done. Infertility is, and sometimes in 25% people, we do all the tests and all the tests are normal. And we say they have unexplained infertility, but we still have to treat them. I mean, there are different things we can do like IUI, test tube babies and all that. But infertility का कोई एक टेस्ट नहीं होता. दूसरी चीज जो लड़कियों को समझनी चाहिए सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट, कि एज के साथ फर्टिलिटी गिरती है. मैं कह के नहीं थकती कि एज के साथ फर्टिलिटी गिरती है. सो प्लीज get married in good time when you don't need any fertility services.
I think, ma'am, that's the postmodern condition. We cannot help it, right?
And if you understand, like I always say, you cannot live life in compartments. I got married when I was 23. I had just finished my MBBS. I did my post graduation. I did my training in England, left my children, went for 1 year. सब कुछ साथ साथ चलता है जिंदगी में. But if the same thing I had delayed it for 5-10 years, maybe I had not conceived naturally. Maybe I would have had to have IVF or something.
Yeah. I think we in our society could have more open attitude towards sexual health, right? That I think would help the cause. This is what
No, I think the girls have to understand it's got nothing to do with open society. If you are not going to get married, उतनी open society तो अभी होने वाली नहीं है that you are going to produce babies without getting married. So open होने से कोई फायदा नहीं है. You have to understand, because जब घर में माँ कहती है तो you don't listen to her because you think, well, because she doesn't have any credentials to tell you that. But as a doctor, I am telling you that the fertility goes down with age. So you have to be, peak fertility is till 25. So if not 25, at least by 30, you should have a child. If possible, of course.
Yeah. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. We have Sonam. She's asking something. Ma'am, how the parents can know at the time of pregnancy whether the baby would be a girl or a boy without taking any help from technological test? Because in rural areas,
because
yes,
it is illegal to know in India what is the sex
exactly.
of the child is illegal in India. And
Yeah.
if a young girl is asking कि कैसे पता चले, that means you don't, वही वाली बात आ गई ना, that you don't want to have a girl. Then what are you? That means you're downgrading yourself. So I will not answer that question.
Yes, I also agree with that. Then, ma'am, Abhimanyu is asking, do women hereditarily prone to obesity necessarily require medical interventions for fertility or good health of the fetus? Also, does being underweight cause similar issues?
Well, it is not necessary that everybody who is overweight would need some treatment to get pregnant. But if you compare two cohorts, cohorts means a group of people. If you compare two groups, one with normal weight and one with overweight, then certainly the overweight people will, number one, have more difficulty in getting pregnant, will have higher risk of miscarriages. So overall, pregnancy complications will be higher, like miscarriage, developing high blood sugar, high blood pressure. So one is conceiving and the other is taking the baby home. So both the problems are more in women who are overweight. But you cannot say for, X person. I mean, आप किसी के लिए नहीं कह सकते हो कि because you are overweight, you will have a problem. So we cannot predict for an individual. But we can, basically, there is enough scientific evidence to show that if you're overweight, you are more likely to have problems in conception and during pregnancy. And what was the other question?
The other question was, does being underweight can also cause similar
There was
problem?
another part.
Yeah.
Underweight, जो बहुत severely underweight होते हैं, even their hormonal status becomes, totally topsy-turvy. So they also have hormonal imbalance. Like if you see athletes, sometimes those who are exercising very vigorously, उनके periods बंद हो जाते हैं. They go into amenorrhea, what we say technically. They stop having periods. They stop producing the hormones from the brain, which actually make the ovarian cycle, and the periods happen. So even, and also there is another category. Sometimes there is a medical condition called anorexia nervosa. There are some girls who become paranoid about losing weight, about not eating. So if they lose too much weight, actually the menstrual cycle is related to a critical weight. You know, nowadays we started having earlier periods. Like 20, 30 years ago, nobody had a period before 14. Nowadays, even 9-year-old girls are starting their periods. Why? Because they're achieving that weight much sooner than they ought to be. They're overweight. Even children are overweight. So weight is very critical for periods. So at a certain weight, periods will start. And if the weight is below that, periods will stop.
Hmm. Yes. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, Vikas is asking from Ramjas College. He's asking why, ma'am, while talking about contraception, most of people would stick to either oral pills or condoms. What about contraceptive injections and vaginal pills? How can effective and safe are these alternatives? How effective and safe are these alternatives? Can a woman with beta thalassemia trait go for contraceptive injections?
First of all, that statement is not correct that most women take oral pills. Hardly 7-8% women take oral pills. There is so much of, again, myth, that if you prescribe them pills, the first thing they say, ma'am, side effect to nahi hote. In pregnancy, they will take tons of hormones which are not required, which is, of course, it's not their fault. It is also their doctors. But they will consume as much hormone in pregnancy. But अगर आप कॉन्ट्रासेप्टिव के लिए पिल देंगे तो the first thing they will say is कि इससे साइड इफेक्ट तो नहीं होते, सो पहली बात तो पिल का अपटेक बहुत लो है. हमारे कंट्री में अबाउट 8% है, यूएस वगैरह में 30-40% है पिल का अपटेक. सो यू कैन सी द डिफरेंस. दूसरा, he was saying whether other methods, now I've forgotten what other methods he was asking. He was talking about
Oh, yes.
implants.
Injections,
In
vaginal pills and
implant.
some injections. Yeah.
Vaginal pills, there are some vaginal pills which are used, as just for the, when you have a sexual contact. They are not as effective as the regular contraceptive pills which are taken orally. You We don't, I don't think it is available in India, but you can have vaginal rings which release the same hormone which we take orally as a tablet, and they are as effective, but they are not available. And vaginal pills which people use are not as effective. Implants and injections are very effective. Injections you can take once in 3 months, simple intramuscular depot injection. Implants are also very, very effective, and they can be there for 5 years, 8 years. But it's a little procedure. You have to insert that implant. They may not be available everywhere. So the most common contraception that is available is for men is condoms. For women, condom is not as good as the pills, but obviously that's available for the men. And for women, oral contraceptive pills and IUCD, like copper T. These are the two most commonly used, but certainly the injections and implants are very effective. In fact, injection implants are more effective than even like copper T.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. There's a question in Hindi. I think Swasti would like to read that out
Sure.
by Ajit Singh. Yeah.
I'm glad that men are.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Anji.
मैम, अजीत तोमर गुरुकुल कांगड़ी हरिद्वार से पूछ रहे हैं कि क्या सेरेब्रल पाल्सी से ग्रसित बच्चे के अंदर सेरेब्रल पाल्सी का एकमात्र कारण बर्थ एफिक्सिया हो सकता है? क्या ऐसा संभव है कि भ्रूण के रूप में ही बेबी के अंदर कोई कमी रही हो, या जिसके कारण बाद में उसे सेरेब्रल पाल्सी डायग्नोज किया जाए? न्यूरोलॉजिकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से क्या ऐसा संभव है कि बेबी का भ्रूण के रूप में ऐसा विकास हुआ हो कि उसे सेरेब्रल पाल्सी हो जाए?
जो सेरेब्रल पॉल्सी की जो प्रॉब्लम है, इनफैक्ट ये बहुत अच्छा आपने सवाल पूछा, क्योंकि ज्यादातर लोगों को लगता है कि लेबर के दौरान उसको ऑक्सीजन नहीं मिली बच्चे को और इस वजह से सेरेब्रल पॉल्सी हो गई. वो एक कारण है, लेकिन वो सिर्फ 10% में होता है. 90% में भ्रूण में प्रॉब्लम होती है, प्रेगनेंसी के दौरान प्रॉब्लम होती है, जिसकी वजह से बच्चे को सेरेब्रल पॉल्सी होती है. सो जो ऑक्सीजन ड्यूरिंग लेबर के टाइम पे जो ऑक्सीजन ना मिलने से वो सिर्फ 10% में होती है सेरेब्रल पॉल्सी.
Thank you, ma'am. There is a Rajni Johar. She's asking, She's asking a personal question. She's saying, I had mild to moderate dysplasia, which was treated, and every 5 years I get HPV test. Is this be of concern in future for my daughter?
Sorry, say it again.
Is this be of any concern in future for her daughter? She's worried about her daughter.
How old is the daughter? Acha, okay, anyway. So mild to moderate dysplasia is basically, that is what we do the screening for, to pick up the disease at this stage when there is dysplasia. So dysplasia simply means कि जो normal cells थे उनमें कुछ architectural problem आने लगा है. There are some changes in the cells at the cellular level which you can diagnose in the cervix. And this, if not treated, may or may not proceed to cancer. Not everybody who has dysplasia would actually progress to cancer, but certainly there is a risk of developing into cancer. So when we diagnose mild to moderate dysplasia, it is not just left, it is treated. That's why I said this is a totally preventable cancer, because this is a very slow growing cancer, gives you enough opportunity to diagnose dysplasia and treat it so that you never have cancer. So if she must have been treated if it is diagnosed, and there's nothing to worry.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I hope that answers her question. Ma'am, I think we just have time for one last question. We can't be holding you for too long. And Dr. Aruni Sharma is asking a very important question. And I think this is the question that must be on mind of a lot of women who want to be child-free, who are choosing to be child-free. She's saying, what would become of female health if even after marriage, couples don't want to have children? So what about women who want to be child-free?
Okay, so she's saying that you want to get married, but you don't want to have a child.
Arzi, please mute yourself. Yes, sorry.
So see, everything in life has its pros and cons. There is no path where you say कि ये ही इस पे सब ठीक है और इसमें सब गलत है. ऐसा जिंदगी में नहीं होता है. You know, so if she doesn't want to have children, she certainly is at increased risk of certain diseases, but it doesn't mean that she will have those diseases. So, I mean, if she is looking after health otherwise, if she's not overweight, exercises regularly, and, you know, going for routine checkups, she does have an increased risk of things like breast cancer, developing endometriosis or fibroids. When I say, I'm saying increased risk, that doesn't mean that she will have it. So that risk she will have. I mean, अगर आप एक X path choose करते हो तो उसके अपने जो risk है वो है. उसके हो सकता है उसके लिए benefits भी हो. She may be, you know, she might be able to achieve more professionally. She might be able to achieve more in life, which women with children can't, because obviously most of their time is spent with bringing up their children. But risk factors तो रहेंगे. But वो risk factors के लिए, if she regularly gets health checkups done and looks after herself, then it's okay. It's her choice.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for such an enlightening session. I think Swasti would like to take over from here.
If there's still any more questions,
thank you so much.
Can I just say something, Swasti? I'm saying if anybody else wants to ask a question, or if there are any more questions, you can always email to me and I can answer those questions.
Yes, ma'am. सब आपके email के बारे में पूछ भी रहे हैं.
Yes, ma'am. बहुत सारे question रह गए हैं. So what we can do in that case, we can unmute. Like we can type. Can you type your mail ID on the chat box?
I will. कितने questions बचे हैं?
बहुत सारे हैं.
मैम बहुत सारे लोग questions पूछ रहे हैं. काफी personal questions भी पूछ रहे हैं. तो I think it would be better if we take.
मैंने email अपनी डाल दी है. So you can give them the email and I will be happy to answer. No problem.
Yes, ma'am. Swasti?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. अब स्मृति मैम आपको हैंड ओवर करती हूँ मैं आपको.
Yeah. Yeah, I will have to I really want
Photo-
to thank ma'am because it was really informative and really nice session. Because the way you have explained everything, it was wonderful for us. And of course, like we have benefited from the knowledge. Yeah, it is a little bit scary for some, like that, though I'm married and I'm having children. But yeah, it is scary for some women who have not got married. But of course, like it is very informative and it was very nice session. Thank you so much. And we will try our level best, the way we are, the way God has made us multitasking. we- That is gift only remains with women, that we can do many things together. Uh, and it was really wonderful session. So of course, like we can plan our life also in a way that it should not affect our health. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Smriti, Dr. Swasti, Pushbu. Who else was there?
Lots of people were there, ma'am. Prachi ma'am was there,
Prachi,
Pramod was there.
I'm looking at my screen. I can only see these four
Yeah.
names. So Prachi was there. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I hope you people enjoyed, but I enjoyed it. I'm absolutely open. Anytime you people want to have another session, just let me know. I enjoy talking to people. In fact, I would have enjoyed more if it was a live thing, because then you get audience feedback, immediately you can see, you have eye contact. So virtual you're talking to a screen, which is not that much fun. But I really enjoy talking to people. And, I mean, if I can be of any help, any myths I can clear, or I can be of any guidance, I love it. So please feel free if you want to have another session anytime and people have questions. I'm
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. For sure.
Thank you so much.
एक सूचना